We're about to talk about the largest object you will ever meaningfully imagine, and it's already on a collision course with us. Not metaphorically, not eventually, right now. Andromeda is so big that if you could see it with your naked eye the way it actually exists, it would stretch wider than the full moon in the sky, 6 times wider, and it's coming straight for the Milky Way at a speed that makes continents feel slow. This is not a future problem. This is a present motion. Gravity has already made the decision. All that's left is the fall. We tend to think of galaxies as pictures, flat spirals, pretty smears of light, something safely framed by a telescope or a textbook. But Andromeda is not an image. It's a structure, a thing, a gravitational engine so large that calling it a galaxy almost hides what it really is. It contains around 1 trillion stars. Not millions, 1 trillion. Each one with its own gravity, its own history, many with their own planets. And that's just the visible part. Wrapped around that bright spiral is a dark matter halo so vast it dwarfs everything we can see, extending hundreds of thousands of light years beyond the glowing disk. That invisible mass is already overlapping with ours, right now. Even though the stars themselves are still millions of years away from first contact, the halos have begun to touch. 2 ancient gravitational empires brushing against each other in the dark. This isn't a sudden crash. It's a slow, inevitable draw, a cosmic tightening that began long before humans learned to look up. From Earth, Andromeda looks small, a faint smudge you can miss if you don't know where to look. But that's only because it's far. Distance lies to us. If Andromeda were as close as the nearest stars, it wouldn't just dominate the sky, it would erase it. Its spiral arms would stretch from horizon to horizon. Its core would burn brighter than any constellation. Night would never be dark again. And that's the first violation of intuition. The biggest things in the universe often look the smallest. Andromeda is about 2.5 million light years away. That sounds safe. That sounds like not our problem. But space doesn't care how it sounds. Gravity doesn't care how long something takes. What matters is direction. And Andromeda is moving toward us at roughly 110 kilometers per second, about 400,000 kilometers per hour. That's fast enough to circle Earth 10 times in a single hour, and it's been doing this for billions of years. We are not stationary observers watching something approach. We are passengers inside one of the objects involved. The Milky Way is not a fixed backdrop. It's a spinning disk of stars, gas, dust, and dark matter, roughly 100,000 light-years across. Our Sun sits about halfway out from the centre, calmly orbiting once every 230 million years. We feel stable because our timescales are small, but zoom out and stability disappears. Galaxies are not static. They drift, pull, cannibalize, merge. This is how large structures grow, not gently, by collision. When Andromeda and the Milky Way finally meet, about 4 billion years from now, the word collision will be misleading. Stars won't smash into each other like billiard balls. Space is too big for that. Instead, gravity will reach in and start rearranging everything. Spiral arms will stretch and tear. Long tidal streams of stars will be flung outward like glowing scars. The familiar shape of the Milky Way will dissolve. From the surface of Earth, if Earth still exists, our sky will change dramatically. Over millions of years, Andromeda will grow larger, brighter, more structured. Individual star clouds will become visible. The core will loom. Then, during the closest approach, the sky will be filled with tangled arcs of light as both galaxies pass through each other, distort, recoil, and come back again. Because this won't happen once. It will happen repeatedly. Galaxies don't merge cleanly. They dance, they overshoot, they fall back. Each pass drains energy, tightens the orbit, deepens the entanglement. Over time, hundreds of millions of years, the 2 spirals will lose their identity. Their stars will settle into a new shape, a massive, swollen, elliptical galaxy, sometimes called Milkomeda. By then, the combined system will contain over 2 trillion stars. 2 trillion suns. But the real scale isn't in the light, it's in the dark. Dark matter outweighs normal matter by a factor of about 5 to 1. That means most of what's merging is invisible. Two enormous dark halos collapsing into one, reshaping the gravitational landscape of the local group, the small cluster of galaxies we belong to. Smaller galaxies will be dragged in, disrupted, absorbed. Gravity doesn't just merge galaxies, it cleans the neighbourhood. This is where humanity enters the frame, not as heroes, not as victims, but as witnesses. Right now, every atom in your body is moving with the Milky Way toward Andromeda. You are part of the trajectory. You are already falling. The fact that it will take billions of years doesn't change the direction. If time were sped up, if cosmic history were compressed into a single day, the collision would be happening before nightfall. And here's another intuition breaker. Despite the violence at galactic scale, the odds that our sun will be directly affected are low. Space is mostly empty. Our solar system may drift into a new orbit, perhaps farther from the galactic centre, perhaps closer. The night sky would be unrecognizable, but Earth itself might survive the merger intact, assuming it survives the sun's own evolution, which is a separate countdown already ticking. That contrast is unsettling. At the largest scales, everything is moving, colliding, transforming. At the smallest human scale, life might continue, almost unaware, under a sky that tells a completely different story. This isn't the universe threatening us. It's the universe revealing how it operates when given enough time. Galactic collisions are not rare accidents. They are the main way galaxies grow. Our own Milky Way is a cannibal, already digesting smaller galaxies like the Sagittarius dwarf. The stars you see tonight may include refugees from systems that no longer exist. Andromeda itself bears scars of past mergers, faint streams of stars arcing around it like ghostly fingerprints. What's coming for us has already happened countless times elsewhere. The difference is that this time, we're inside it. As Andromeda approaches, as its gravity slowly reshapes our future sky, it forces a quiet realization. The universe is not built for permanence. It is built for process. Structures form, collide, dissolve and reform on scales so vast that meaning itself has to stretch to keep up. And yet here we are, small, temporary, conscious, able to see the collision coming long before it arrives, able to trace its path, feel its inevitability, and still stand under a calm night sky that gives no hint of the transformation already underway. The fall has begun. Gravity has locked in the outcome, and the biggest thing you can imagine is already closer than it has ever been before. If we freeze the universe right now, halt every orbit, silence every star, the motion is still there. Not as drama, not as explosion, but as direction. Andromeda's vector points at us. Ours points back. Two massive systems leaning into the same future. This isn't speculation stitched together from fragile assumptions. It's measured. The light from Andromeda is slightly blue-shifted, its wavelength compressed. That compression is the universe whispering a simple truth. It's getting closer. We've known this for less than a century. For almost all of human history, Andromeda was just a mythic blur, a little cloud, something vague and harmless. It wasn't until the 1920s that we realized what it actually was, another galaxy entirely, far outside the Milky Way. And in that same era, we discovered the next shock. It's not receding with the expansion of the universe like most galaxies. It's approaching, against the general flow, a local exception carved by gravity. That alone should feel wrong. On the largest scales, space itself is stretching. Galaxies are flying away from each other as the universe expands. The farther they are, the faster they go. Andromeda ignores that rule. It's close enough, massive enough, that gravity wins. Expansion loses. The cosmic tide reverses locally, and everything begins to fall inward. This is what it means to live inside a gravitationally bound system. The local group, our small collection of galaxies, is not drifting apart. It's collapsing inward, slowly, patiently, over billions of years. and Andromeda is the largest mass in that group, slightly bigger than the Milky Way, slightly heavier, slightly more dominant. That slightly matters. When two massive bodies approach each other, the centre of motion isn't one or the other. It's the centre of mass between them, a point in space where gravity balances perfectly. And in the Milky Way Andromeda system, that point is not at the centre of the Milky Way. It's somewhere between the two, pulled closer to Andromeda by its greater mass, which means something subtle and unsettling. We are not just waiting for Andromeda to arrive. We are already moving to meet it. The entire Milky Way is drifting toward that shared centre. Our Sun, our planets, every human who has ever lived, all of it is sliding through intergalactic space as part of a much larger manoeuvre. The motion is slow enough to feel eternal, but it is precise, locked in, unavoidable unless gravity itself changes its mind. Zoom out further, and the scale starts to distort intuition again. The visible disk of Andromeda, what you see in photographs, is about 220,000 light-years across, more than twice the diameter of the Milky Way's bright spiral. But that's only the lit portion. Surrounding it is a vast halo of stars and dark matter, extending perhaps 1 million light-years from the centre. The same is true for us. These halos are not empty shells, they are thick, massive envelopes, and when you account for them, the distance between the Milky Way and Andromeda shrinks dramatically. In a very real sense, the outskirts of our galaxies are already interpenetrating. The collision has begun in slow motion, long before the first stars meet. This is where the word approach becomes misleading. What's happening isn't a straight-line crash, it's a gradual deepening of a gravitational well that both systems are sinking into. The closer they get, the faster the fall. The faster the fall, the more violent the reshaping. And reshaping is the right word. Galaxies are not rigid. They are self-gravitating swarms, billions of independent orbits layered on top of each other, balanced delicately between motion and collapse. When another galaxy intrudes, that balance shatters. Orbits stretch, planes tilt, bars form, spiral arms unravel. What looked permanent reveals itself as temporary architecture. We know this because we see it everywhere else. Look deep into the universe and you find galaxies mid-collision, twisted, elongated, flung apart into long tidal tails that glow with newborn stars. These are not rare oddities, they are common outcomes. They are snapshots of the same process that built the galaxies we see today, including ours. The Milky Way's serene spiral shape is a phase, not a destiny. As Andromeda draws closer over the next few billion years, its gravity will begin to tug on the outer edges of our galaxy. Stars in the halo will be the first to respond, their orbits stretching into long arcs. Then the disk itself will feel the pull. Spiral arms will thicken, warp, distort. Star formation will spike as gas clouds compress under new gravitational stresses. From the inside, this won't feel like an apocalypse. It will feel like a slow, generational transformation of the sky. No explosions, no sudden darkness, just change, layered on change, until the old patterns are no longer recognizable. And this is where the human frame tightens. 4 billion years is longer than our species has existed, longer than complex life on Earth has existed. It's easy to mentally discard that timescale as irrelevant, but the forces at work don't care whether anyone is around to watch. They operate with or without witnesses. Still, the fact that we can see it coming matters. It tells us something about our place in the story. We are latecomers who arrived during a calm interval, long after the universe's most violent era, yet early enough to observe structures before they dissolve into something else. The Sun itself will complicate the picture. In about 5 billion years, roughly the same era as the final merger, it will exhaust the hydrogen in its core and swell into a red giant. Earth's fate under that transformation is uncertain at best. Our planet may be scorched, stripped, or destroyed entirely. Humanity's survival into the era of galactic merger is not guaranteed. But survival is not the only measure of relevance. Even if no human eyes ever see Andromeda fill the sky, the fact that we can predict it, that we can trace the arc of galaxies across billions of years anchors us to the same physical reality as those distant stars. We are not outside observers looking at a diagram. We are inside the system, calculating our own future motion. Andromeda is not coming to end us. It is coming because this is what mass does in a universe governed by gravity. It gathers. It merges. It builds larger structures from smaller ones. The calm spiral we live in is already the product of ancient collisions. The future elliptical galaxy will be the product of ours. Nothing personal, nothing malicious. Just scale, doing what scale always does. As the distance continues to close, as the night sky slowly prepares to become unrecognizable, one idea becomes unavoidable. The universe is not static scenery around human history. Human history is a brief pattern moving through a much larger, older choreography. We are already in motion, already committed, already part of the four. And Andromeda, vast, ancient, indifferent, is not a distant object anymore. It's a partner in an encounter written into gravity itself, unfolding with a patience that makes our entire civilization feel like a single breath. Imagine accelerating time. Not enough to blur everything into abstraction, just enough to feel the movement. Centuries pass, then millennia. The constellations you recognize begin to loosen. Their angles shift. Stars drift, not randomly, but with intent, as if the sky itself has decided to rearrange. And in the background, barely noticeable at first, Andromeda grows. Not brighter in a dramatic way, larger, more structured. Its once faint smudge thickens into a visible shape, then a presence. This is how cosmic change announces itself. Quietly, long before it becomes undeniable. At first, Andromeda's approach is something only astronomers would notice. Subtle changes in position, slight increases in apparent size. But over millions of years, those changes compound. The galaxy's spiral arms begin to resolve. The central bulge brightens. The night sky gains a second axis, a massive object that refuses to stay small. If you could stand on Earth during this era, the sky would feel crowded. Not dangerous, not violent, just full. The illusion that the universe is distant would start to break down. You wouldn't need a telescope to know that something enormous is happening. And while all eyes are drawn upward, something more consequential is unfolding in the dark. As Andromeda and the Milky Way draw closer, their dark matter halos sink deeper into each other. This invisible mass doesn't collide or scatter, it interpenetrates, thickening the gravitational field between the galaxies. Think of two vast fog banks overlapping, each one invisible on its own, but together becoming dense enough to feel. That density changes everything. Gravity strengthens, orbits destabilize. Stars that once followed calm, predictable paths begin to wander. Some are pulled inward toward the growing gravitational center. Others are flung outward, cast into intergalactic space, carrying with them planets, moons, entire solar systems. Exiles drifting between galaxies with no home but the dark. This is not destruction in the explosive sense. It's redistribution. A cosmic rebalancing where nothing stays where it used to be. And yet, the scale of emptiness still protects life, at least for now. Even in the chaos of merging galaxies, the chance of a direct stellar collision is vanishingly small. Stars are tiny compared to the distances between them. Most pass by each other like ships in an empty ocean, their gravity the only interaction. But most is not all. Across the combined system, billions of stars will have their planetary systems disrupted, orbits stretched, comets dislodged, asteroid belts stirred. Long periods of gravitational instability ripple outward, increasing the odds of impacts, radiation bursts, and slow climatic shifts on countless worlds. Some planets will be sterilized, others may be seeded, new environments forged by shock, compression, and fresh star formation. Galactic collisions don't just end stories, they start them. As the first close pass approaches, about 4 billion years from now, the sky transforms decisively. Andromeda no longer feels like an approaching object. It feels like a second galaxy sharing the same space. Its stars weave through ours, not colliding, but interlacing, like two swarms of fireflies passing through each other in the night. From Earth's perspective, the sky would be overwhelming. Massive arcs of light stretch across it. Familiar constellations are erased. The Milky Way's band thickens, twists, fractures. Andromeda's core burns as a rival centre of gravity, pulling attention and matter toward it. This is the brink moment, the peak of visual drama, the instant when the old sky finally breaks. And then, almost unexpectedly, the motion reverses. After the first pass, the two galaxies separate again, not because the encounter failed, but because momentum carries them through. They swing past each other, distorted and wounded, trailing long tidal streams of stars like cosmic contrails. For a time, hundreds of millions of years, they drift apart, leaving behind a sky that is chaotic but quieter. This is where intuition fails again. We expect collisions to end with impact. Galaxies don't work that way. Gravity is patient. It allows overshoot. It allows return. Eventually, the pull reasserts itself. The galaxies slow, turn, fall back toward each other for a second pass, then a third. Each encounter strips away more structure, drains more orbital energy, deepens the merger. With every pass, spiral order fades. By the final stages, neither the Milky Way nor Andromeda exists as a recognizable entity. Their disks are gone, their arms dissolved. What remains is a swollen, luminous cloud of stars orbiting a shared center, a giant elliptical galaxy, smooth and featureless compared to the spirals that came before. At its heart, something else has happened. Both galaxies host supermassive black holes. Ours weighs about 4 million times the mass of the Sun. Andromeda's is far larger, tens of millions of solar masses. As the galaxies merge, these black holes sink toward the center through a process called dynamical friction, dragging stars with them, clearing out space. Eventually, they find each other. This is not a sudden crash. It's a slow, tightening dance. Black holes orbiting closer and closer, emitting gravitational waves, ripples in space-time itself that carry energy away. Over millions of years, the orbit shrinks. Then, in a final moment, they merge. The release of energy is staggering. For a brief time, the combined black hole becomes one of the most powerful engines in the universe. Jets of high-energy radiation may blaze outward. The core of the new galaxy flares. If any life remains nearby, it feels the consequences. But again, distance softens violence. Planets far from the center may barely notice. The universe is ruthless up close and forgiving at scale. And here's the quiet resolution hiding inside all this extremity. After the merger, things calm down. Star formation slows. The chaotic motions settle into smooth orbits. The new galaxy, Milkomeda, enters a long, stable phase, shining gently for trillions of years as its stars age and fade. The sky once again becomes predictable. From a human perspective, this is almost impossible to hold in mind. Our lives are measured in decades, civilizations in centuries. Even our longest histories barely touch 1 million years. And yet, the forces shaping our cosmic future operate on timescales that make all of that feel fleeting. Still, we belong to those forces. Every atom in your body was forged in earlier generations of stars. Stars born in ancient galaxies, some of them products of mergers just like the one coming. The collision ahead is not an ending imposed from outside. It's the continuation of a cycle that made us possible in the first place. We are not watching the universe do something alien. We are watching it do what it has always done. Build complexity through gravity, break it apart, and build again on a larger scale. And Andromeda, vast and unavoidable, is simply the next chapter moving steadily toward us, written not in prophecy, but in motion. Now pull the camera back even farther, past individual stars, past glowing arms and dark halos, until the motion of entire galaxies starts to look almost calm. From this distance, The Milky Way and Andromeda are not dramatic spirals colliding in fire. They are two dense knots in a much larger web, responding to tensions laid down at the birth of the universe itself. Because this story didn't start with galaxies. It started with imbalance. Shortly after the universe formed, matter was not evenly distributed. Tiny fluctuations, barely denser than their surroundings, began to pull in more material. Over immense spans of time, gravity amplified those differences. Filaments formed, voids opened. The cosmic web emerged, a vast structure of matter stretching across hundreds of millions of light years. Galaxies are beads on those filaments. The Milky Way and Andromeda are neighbours because the web placed them close together, funneled matter into the same region, and left gravity to finish the job. From that perspective, their merger isn't exceptional. It's inevitable. Zoom back in, and the inevitability feels heavier. Inside the Milky Way, long before Andromeda becomes visually dominant, subtle changes will already be unfolding. The outer disk will begin to warp. Star streams, faint rivers of stars torn from smaller galaxies long ago, will stretch and twist under new gravitational stresses. The sky will still look familiar, but it will feel less rigid, as if the structure holding it together has loosened. And then there's time, not just duration, but sequence. Human intuition wants a clear order, before, during, after. The universe doesn't cooperate. Events overlap, processes bleed into one another. While Andromeda approaches, other galaxies in the local group are also moving. The Triangulum galaxy may be drawn in, dwarf galaxies will be absorbed. The merger won't be a single encounter between two isolated systems. It will be a slow consolidation of an entire region of space. A gravitational sweep. From Earth, if Earth remains, the changes will be relentless, but slow enough to normalize. Children will grow up under skies their ancestors never saw and think nothing of it. Cultures will rewrite myths around new star patterns. Navigation will adapt. Calendars will shift. The galaxy's transformation won't feel like catastrophe. It will feel like environment. That's an uncomfortable thought. Even cosmic upheaval becomes background noise if it lasts long enough. And yet, some moments will stand out. During peak interaction phases, star formation will surge. Gas clouds compressed by tidal forces will collapse, igniting waves of new stars, bright, blue, short-lived. The night sky will gain clusters and nebulae far more luminous than anything we see today. Supernovae will become more common, briefly outshining entire galaxies before fading. Light and death, creation and destruction, layered together. These stellar nurseries won't care whether planets already exist nearby. Radiation will sterilize some worlds, shockwaves will reshape others. In the long run, the merger will increase chemical complexity, seeding the galaxy with heavier elements forged in massive stars and explosions. The ingredients for life will become more abundant, even as existing life faces new risks. This is the paradox at the heart of cosmic scale. Violence and fertility are inseparable. The same gravity that tears structures apart also compresses matter into new forms. Without galactic mergers, large galaxies like ours wouldn't exist at all. Without large galaxies, heavy elements would be rarer. Without heavy elements, there would be no rocky planets, no oceans, no bodies capable of wondering what's happening overhead. The collision that threatens stability is also the process that made stability possible. And still, there is vulnerability. Our solar system is small compared to galactic scales, but it is not immune to long-term disruption. As stellar orbits change, close passes between stars, still rare but more likely, could perturb distant objects like the Oort cloud, sending comets inward. Periods of increased bombardment could follow. Long-term climate stability might be broken, not by a single dramatic impact, but by a sustained era of gravitational noise. Nothing guaranteed, nothing impossible. Humanity's fate during this era is an open question framed by capability, adaptation, and choice. By the time Andromeda dominates the sky, our species may have spread far beyond Earth, or vanished entirely. We may exist as biological beings, digital minds, something unrecognizable by today's standards, or not at all. The universe will not pause to check. But the fact that the question even exists, that intelligent matter can look ahead billions of years and trace the motion of galaxies, adds a strange layer of meaning. We are not just passengers. We are narrators inside the process, briefly able to reflect on the arc before it completes. And the arc is long. After the final merger, after the black holes coalesce and the fireworks fade, Milkomeda will settle into a quieter life. Elliptical galaxies are old souls. They lack the dramatic spiral arms and dense gas clouds that fuel ongoing star formation. Their stars are older, redder, longer lived. The sky from within one would feel calmer, dimmer, more ancient. Trillions of years could pass in that state. Stars would slowly burn out. White dwarfs would cool. Neutron stars would drift. Black holes would dominate the mass budget of the galaxy, silent and patient. The universe itself would continue to expand, accelerating, pushing distant galaxies beyond the cosmic horizon until Milkomeda is effectively alone. From that far future, the idea of two separate spiral galaxies colliding might feel like ancient myth, a story about a brighter, more crowded cosmos that no longer exists. And yet, all of that future is already encoded in the present. The direction of Andromeda's motion, the mass distribution of dark matter halos, the initial conditions laid down when the universe was young, none of it requires intention, none of it requires drama. The narrative emerges because matter obeys simple rules at scale and time is generous. We often imagine the universe as something that happens around us, but in this story, we are inside the mechanism. Our atoms are moving with the galaxy. Our galaxy is moving toward another. Our future sky is being shaped long before we're capable of seeing it. And that realization does something subtle but profound. It shrinks us, yes, but it also places us exactly where we belong, as temporary structures inside a much larger, ongoing transformation. Not separate from it, not central to it, but undeniably part of it. Andromeda is bigger than you think, because bigger, at this scale, isn't about size alone. It's about consequence, about inevitability, about the fact that something unimaginably vast can be both distant and intimate at the same time. It is moving toward us. We are moving toward it. And the space between, once thought empty and eternal, is already thick with gravity, memory, and the next shape the universe is preparing to take. There's a temptation, when hearing all this, to imagine the merger as a single event, one dramatic era, one unforgettable sky. But that instinct is shaped by human attention, not cosmic reality. What's actually coming is not one moment, but a long corridor of change you walk through without realizing when you cross the threshold. The universe rarely announces its turning points. Long before Andromeda dominates the sky, long before tidal arcs and starbursts, the Milky Way will already be subtly different. The idea of a stable galaxy will quietly expire. Star orbits that once felt timeless will begin to drift. The disk will thicken. The galactic plane, our reference for up and down, will wobble like a compass near a magnet. Nothing breaks, nothing snaps. It just loosens. From inside the system, that's the most unsettling part. There's no clear moment when you can say, this is when it started. Gravity doesn't flip switches, it applies pressure. And pressure, given enough time, reshapes everything. Consider how long stars live. The Sun will orbit the Milky Way centre dozens more times before Andromeda's first close pass. Each orbit takes 230 million years, longer than mammals have existed on Earth. And yet, even over a single orbit, the galaxy's mass distribution will be changing. The centre of gravity will shift. The reference frame itself will slide. Our Sun won't notice in any visceral way, but its path will curve differently than it otherwise would have. A microscopic deviation compounded over time, redirecting the future sky above Earth, or wherever humanity may be. This is how the merger asserts itself. Not through force you can feel, but through trajectories you can't see until they've already changed. Andromeda, meanwhile, is not arriving as a pristine spiral. It is coming with history attached. Streams of stars already trail behind it, remnants of smaller galaxies it has consumed. Those streams will be among the first to interact with the Milky Way's outskirts, interlacing like ghostly threads before the main bodies meet. These stars will not announce their origin. Once mixed, there will be no visible boundary between ours and theirs. Future astronomers, if such beings exist, will have to reconstruct the past from subtle chemical signatures, orbital eccentricities, faint patterns in stellar motion. Identity dissolves quickly at this scale. That loss of identity is not limited to galaxies. It applies to eras. We like to label time. Before the merger, during the merger, after the merger. But from within, those labels blur. The night sky of 1 million years blends into the next. Cultures adapt. Biology adapts. What once felt transitional becomes normal. And this normalization hides danger. Not sudden extinction-level danger, but long, grinding risk. As star formation spikes, radiation levels across the galaxy rise. Supernovae become more frequent. Gamma-ray bursts, rare but catastrophic if aimed directly, become slightly more likely. The statistical background shifts. Life survives statistics, not certainties. Some worlds will be lost. Others will persist. Some will emerge only because the merger happened, forming around stars born in compressed gas clouds triggered by tidal forces. For every planet sterilized, another may be created in an environment richer in heavy elements than any previous generation. This is not balance, it's excess. The universe doesn't compensate, it produces. From the perspective of any single civilization, this era would feel precarious. From the perspective of the galaxy, it's productive. And now, briefly, narrow the focus to a human scale, not in years, but in meaning. Everything we value, history, culture, identity, is tied to continuity, to the idea that the environment tomorrow will resemble the environment today closely enough that memory matters. Galactic mergers challenge that assumption at the deepest level. They are reminders that continuity is local, temporary, and contingent. And yet, they also reveal something stabilizing. Even as galaxies collide, physics does not become chaotic. The rules do not change. Gravity remains gravity. Orbits remain orbits. Energy is conserved. Patterns emerge even as structures dissolve. There is no cosmic madness here, only scale-exposing processes that are normally hidden. That's why the merger is not a horror story. It's a revelation story. It reveals that what we call permanence is just a long-lived configuration, that what we call catastrophe is often just reorganization, that the universe is not fragile, it is restless. As Andromeda draws closer, that restlessness will become more visible. The sky will gain depth, motion will become legible. The idea that stars are fixed points will finally die everywhere, not just in textbooks. Imagine growing up under a sky where the Milky Way itself changes shape over generations, where children learn that the galaxy is not a backdrop, but a moving object, where myths are written not about eternal stars, but about drifting rivers of light. That psychological shift may be the most profound consequence of all. Because once you internalize motion at that scale, it becomes harder to believe in static truths, harder to believe that anything important is immune to time. And yet, meaning survives. It survives because meaning doesn't require permanence. It requires context. And the merger provides context on a scale few other phenomena can match. It situates every local story inside a much larger arc. It tells us, without words, that we are part of a process far older and far larger than ourselves, and that being part of it is not a diminishment. It's inclusion. The atoms that will make up future stars in Milkomeda are already moving. Some of them are in your body right now. Some were forged in stars that died before Earth formed. Some will end up in places no mind ever observes. The merger doesn't erase that continuity, it extends it. And as the distance between the Milky Way and Andromeda continues to shrink, imperceptibly this year, measurably over millennia, the universe is not rushing, it is not impatient. It is executing a pattern written into mass and motion when the cosmos was young. We tend to think of the future as something that approaches us. In this case, the future is something we are already inside. The fall is slow. The scale is enormous. The outcome is certain enough to map, yet open enough to invite imagination. And somewhere within that vast, patient convergence, humanity, whatever form it takes, has a brief window to notice what's happening and understand that even the largest things in existence are not finished. They are still becoming. There's a moment when you hold all of this together, where the story flips. Up to now, Andromeda feels like an approaching force, something external, massive, inevitable. But look closely at the mechanics, and another truth surfaces. This is not Andromeda invading us. It's the local group collapsing inward on itself, a region of space deciding, slowly, to become one thing instead of many. That distinction matters, because it means there is no safe outside, no neutral ground, no version of the future where the Milky Way simply watches from a distance. Gravity has already drawn the boundary, and we are inside it. The merger is not an event we will encounter, it is an environment we are entering. And environments shape behaviour long before they announce themselves. As the gravitational field of the local group deepens, the motion of smaller galaxies accelerates. Dwarfs that once traced wide, lazy orbits will spiral inward more decisively. Some will be torn apart completely, stretched into long, faint ribbons of stars that wrap around the growing central mass. Others will plunge through the forming Milkomeda, adding their stars, their dark matter, their history to the mix. These aren't footnotes, they are contributors. Every galaxy that falls in alters the final shape. Every infall slightly changes the distribution of mass, the rotation profile, the future sky. The merger is not just Milky Way plus Andromeda. It is a census of everything that was nearby when gravity called. From the inside, this produces a strange effect. The galaxy becomes less legible. In a spiral galaxy, structure is obvious. Arms, a disk, a center. In an elliptical galaxy, structure is statistical. Density gradients, velocity dispersions, smooth light with hidden complexity. The sky stops telling simple stories. Instead of sweeping bands and crisp patterns, you get a glow, a deep, enveloping presence of stars in every direction. The idea of a galactic plane loses meaning. There is no up or down relative to the galaxy anymore. Every direction looks rich. Every direction looks ancient. For a human, or post-human mind, that shift would be profound. Orientation has always depended on patterns, constellations, planes, axes. Elliptical galaxies erase those cues. They replace them with immersion. You are no longer beneath the galaxy. You are inside it. And that sense of enclosure carries emotional weight. The sky becomes less theatrical, more intimate, less dynamic on short timescales, but deeper in accumulated history. The light you see comes from stars that may have been born in different galaxies entirely, now blended beyond easy distinction. The universe stops presenting chapters. It presents sediment. But rewind slightly. Before that calm, there is chaos worth lingering in. During the height of the merger, gravitational torques will funnel vast amounts of gas toward the center of the forming galaxy. This central concentration can ignite a quasar-like phase, where the supermassive black hole feeds aggressively, converting infalling matter into radiation with terrifying efficiency. For a time, millions of years, the galactic core could outshine the combined light of hundreds of billions of stars. Jets of relativistic particles may lance outward, extending tens of thousands of light-years into intergalactic space. Radiation pressure could blow gas away, shutting down star formation in the inner regions. This is feedback on a cosmic scale. Too much growth triggers its own suppression. The galaxy regulates itself not through intention, but through physics pushing back against excess. From far away, this would look like brilliance. From nearby, it would be lethal. Any life-bearing world too close to the center during this phase would face sterilizing radiation. But again, scale is mercy. Most stars orbit far from the core. Most planets are too distant to notice more than a subtle increase in background radiation. Survival, once more, is statistical. What emerges from this self-regulation is a quieter galaxy, older, redder, more stable. A place where star formation slows not because resources are gone, but because the conditions no longer favour collapse. Gas is too hot, orbits are too randomised. Gravity has finished its most dramatic work. And that quiet phase lasts longer than anything before it. Trillions of years. That duration dwarfs the merger itself. The violent era, the part we fixate on, is brief. A flare, a transition. The settled galaxy that follows is the real, long-term state. This is another inversion of intuition. We expect the collision to be the main story. In reality, it's a punctuation mark. The sentence is what comes after. During that long, dim future, Milkomeda will drift alone. Cosmic expansion will accelerate, pushing all other galaxy groups beyond the observable horizon. From within, it will appear as though the universe contains only one galaxy. No Andromeda, no Virgo cluster, no distant spirals at all. Just one island of stars in an endless dark. Any intelligence arising then, on whatever worlds remain, would have a radically different picture of reality. They would see no evidence of an expanding universe, no cosmic background galaxies to measure. Their cosmology would be parochial, shaped entirely by local conditions. They might never know there were once others. This is not speculation layered on fantasy. It's a straightforward consequence of expansion and time. The universe hides its own history if you wait long enough. Which brings us back, uncomfortably, to now. We live at a moment when the universe is still readable, when multiple galaxies are visible, when cosmic history is accessible, when we can see Andromeda coming and understand what that means, not just for the future of the sky, but for the nature of structure itself. That access is temporary. The merger is part of the closing of a window, not because knowledge will vanish overnight, but because evidence will thin. The universe does not preserve records forever. It moves on. And that gives the present a strange weight. We are not special because we are central. We are special because we are early enough and capable enough to notice patterns before they dissolve. To understand that the galaxy we live in is not permanent, that its shape is contingent, that even its name, Milky Way, is tied to a phase that will end. Andromeda's approach forces that realization into focus. It is the reminder that large-scale order is temporary, that identity is scale-dependent, that what feels eternal is often just slow. And yet there is no tragedy here, no cosmic loss that demands mourning. The universe is not destroying something precious, it is transforming something functional into something else functional, according to rules that have never changed. What we call the Milky Way was once many smaller things. What we will call Milkomeda will be something larger. And whatever comes after that will be larger still, or quieter, or darker, depending on how far time is allowed to run. The story does not end with collision. It settles. And in that settling, there is a final, grounding thought worth carrying. Nothing about this process excludes us. We are not spectators watching a distant spectacle. We are matter inside matter, moving with it, shaped by the same gravity that shapes galaxies. Andromeda is bigger than you think, not because of its size alone, but because of how completely it is already entangled with us. The future it represents is not approaching from outside, it is unfolding from within. If you strip the drama away, no glowing spirals, no tidal arcs, no poetic names, the merger reduces to something almost unsettling in its simplicity. Mass following mass. That's it. No intent, no spectacle required, just matter responding to curvature in space-time, drifting toward configurations that are statistically harder to escape. And yet, from inside the process, simplicity never feels simple. Because we don't experience mass, we experience consequences. As Andromeda's influence grows, the Milky Way's internal clock subtly changes. Not the ticking of seconds, but the pacing of events. Star formation accelerates in some regions, stalls in others. The balance between calm and chaos shifts. Entire stellar neighborhoods age faster or slower, depending on how gravity redistributes gas and momentum. The galaxy develops weather. Not clouds and storms, but regions of compression and shear, zones of relative calm, and zones of long-term instability. Over tens of millions of years, these patterns migrate. What was once a quiet suburb of the galaxy may find itself closer to a gravitational current, exposed to higher radiation, more stellar encounters, more disruption. This is how large systems express change, not as uniform transformation, but as uneven pressure. And pressure always finds the weak points. Dense star clusters will feel the merger first. Their tightly packed stars amplify gravitational interactions. Orbits become chaotic. Some stars are ejected at extreme velocities. Hypervelocity stars flung so fast they escape the combined galaxy entirely, shot into intergalactic space as solitary beacons. Imagine that. Stars born in one galaxy, accelerated by another, exiled into the void between clusters, carrying planets or debris on endless, lightless journeys. That exile is not rare. It is expected. Galactic mergers are efficient at making orphans. From a human perspective, that idea carries a quiet terror. Not destruction, but removal. To exist, intact, yet permanently displaced. To survive the event, but lose the context that gave you orientation. It's a reminder that survival and belonging are not the same thing. But step back again, and the emotional weight softens. Because those exiled stars are not mistakes. They are part of the system's way of shedding energy. By flinging mass outward, the merging galaxy stabilizes what remains. Loss, at scale, is function. That logic extends everywhere. Some planetary systems will be disrupted. Others will be tightened. Some stars will be swallowed by black holes. Others will end up farther from the galactic center than they've ever been, enjoying quieter, longer lives. There is no single outcome, only distributions. This is the universe's preferred language. Probability, not narrative. And yet, we can't help but narrate. We imagine the sky changing. We imagine the Milky Way dissolving. We imagine Andromeda filling the heavens. These images anchor us emotionally, but they also hide a deeper truth. Most of the merger will be invisible to the naked eye. The most consequential changes happen in velocity space, not visual space, in altered orbits, in redistributed angular momentum, in the slow heating of stellar populations as ordered motion gives way to random motion. The galaxy doesn't just change shape, it changes temperature, not thermal heat, but dynamical heat. Stars move faster relative to each other. The system becomes more mixed, more isotropic, less structured. This is the galaxy aging. And aging, once started, does not reverse. Spiral galaxies are youthful. They require cold gas, coherent rotation, and relative isolation. Elliptical galaxies are old. They are what remains when order has been thoroughly processed by interaction. Milkomeda will not spin the way the Milky Way does now. Its stars will orbit in many planes, many directions, held together by mass rather than motion. The sense of rotation that defines year at a galactic scale will fade. Time itself feels different in such a place. For any intelligence living inside an elliptical galaxy, the night sky would feel timeless. Fewer bright nebulae, fewer massive young stars, fewer sudden changes. The cosmos would feel ancient and settled, even though immense processes are still unfolding in slow motion. That environment shapes perception. Civilizations that arise there, if any, would likely see the universe as static, eternal, unchanging. Without visible mergers, without distant galaxies, without obvious expansion, the idea that the cosmos evolves might seem absurd. They would live inside a fossil, which raises a strange possibility. We may be among the last beings who can easily see galactic evolution in action. Andromeda's approach is visible now because we are early enough, because the universe is still crowded, because expansion has not yet erased our view of the larger structure. That is not guaranteed to last. In the far future, Milkomeda will be alone. The cosmic microwave background will redshift beyond detectability. The evidence of the Big Bang itself will fade into noise. The universe will hide its own origin story from those who come too late. Knowledge has a window, and that window is closing, slowly, silently, with no announcement. This doesn't make our era privileged in a moral sense, it makes it positioned. We are here at a time when the universe is legible, when Andromeda is still separate enough to be named, when its motion can be measured against a background of other galaxies. That context gives weight to the merger beyond its physical consequences. It makes it a marker, a line between eras of cosmic visibility. Before the merger, a universe of many galaxies. After, a universe that appears almost empty. That shift alone would change how any thinking being understands reality. And still, through all of this, the merger refuses to become a villain. It does not threaten meaning, it reframes it. It tells us that structures we treat as fundamental, galaxies, skies, cosmic maps, are temporary arrangements. What persists are the rules. Gravity, conservation, emergence. Those rules don't care whether a system contains one galaxy or 1,000. They don't care whether anyone is watching. They operate with the same patience, everywhere. And that patience is perhaps the most unsettling and comforting aspect of all. There is no rush. Andromeda is not barreling toward us in a hurry. It is approaching at a pace so slow that entire species will rise and fall unnoticed by the process. It gives no warning, because none is needed. The outcome does not depend on reaction. It depends on mass. We often imagine the future as something that accelerates, technology, change, disruption. The galactic future does the opposite. It decelerates, it smooths, it blends. It reminds us that not all progress is toward complexity. Some progress is toward equilibrium. And in that equilibrium, the universe is not diminished. It is simply different. The Milky Way's spiral arms, with all their beauty, are not sacred. They are a phase. Andromeda's bulk does not erase them out of spite. It absorbs them into a larger configuration that will last longer, burn slower, and fade more gently. This is not an ending that demands fear. It is an ending that invites perspective. Because once you accept that even galaxies are temporary, the pressure to make anything last forever dissolves. What matters instead is participation, being part of the flow while it passes through this particular shape. And right now the shape is two great spirals, locked in approach, already sharing gravity, already rewriting each other's futures. We are not waiting for the merger. We are living inside its opening chapters, whether we notice or not. At some point in this long convergence, the language we use to describe the sky will fail. Not because the sky becomes incomprehensible, but because our old categories stop fitting. Milky Way will no longer describe a river of light stretching across the night. Andromeda will no longer point to a single object. The separation those names imply, this galaxy, that galaxy, will quietly dissolve. And when names dissolve, so does distance. The idea that galaxies are far away only works when they are separate. Once stars from Andromeda begin passing through the outskirts of our own system, once their light mixes with ours, the psychological boundary collapses. The universe no longer feels layered, it feels contiguous. This is a subtle but radical shift. For all of human history, the cosmos has been organized into tiers: Earth, solar system, galaxy, other galaxies. Each step outward feels more abstract, more detached. The merger compresses those tiers. It folds other galaxy into our environment. The sky becomes local in a way it never has been before. And locality changes behavior. When something feels distant, it invites contemplation. When it feels present, it demands adaptation. Cultures born under a merging sky would not treat astronomy as the study of remote objects. They would treat it as environmental science. The motion of star streams, the density of stellar neighborhoods, the activity of the galactic core, these would matter the way climate and geology matter to us now. The galaxy would not be scenery. It would be weather. And weather is something you live with, not something you admire from afar. As stellar densities change, night skies brighten in some regions and dim in others. In dense star fields, true darkness becomes rare. Shadows soften. The contrast between day and night blurs. In quieter outskirts, the opposite happens. Stars thin out, and the sky grows emptier than any human has ever known. Both experiences are consequences of the same process. Some worlds will gain spectacular skies, overwhelming, luminous, crowded with stars of different origins. Others will find themselves in vast stellar deserts, where the nearest bright neighbour is far away, and the sense of cosmic isolation deepens. This unevenness matters because life responds to gradients. Radiation gradients, gravitational gradients, resource gradients. The merger doesn't impose a single fate, it creates a landscape of possibilities. And those possibilities unfold slowly enough to be inhabited. That's another intuition we have to let go of, the idea that galactic change is too fast or too violent for life to coexist with it. In reality, the pace is glacial. Tens of millions of years between major shifts, hundreds of millions between close encounters, long plateaus of relative calm in between. Life thrives on plateaus. On Earth, complex ecosystems exist because change is usually slower than adaptation. The same principle can hold at cosmic scale. Even under a sky that is gradually transforming, life has time to respond, biologically, technologically, culturally. The merger does not erase the possibility of continuity. It reframes it. Continuity stops meaning things stay the same and starts meaning things change slowly enough to matter. And that reframing is deeply uncomfortable for a species that builds stories around permanence, around fixed stars, around eternal heavens. The merger forces a different mythology, one where motion is the rule, not the exception. In that mythology, origins are not singular events but ongoing processes. Identity is not tied to place, but to trajectory. Meaning comes not from stability, but from coherence across change. This is not a lesson the universe is trying to teach. It's a pattern it can't help expressing. As the two galaxies continue their dance, the very concept of a centre becomes fluid. For a while there will be multiple gravitational centres, clusters of mass pulling stars in competing directions. Navigation, in the deepest sense, becomes harder. Not because stars are lost, but because reference points multiply. Eventually, though, gravity simplifies. The centres merge. The system relaxes. A new dominant core emerges, and with it, a new sense of orientation. That cycle, complexity rising, then resolving, is everywhere in physics. Turbulence giving way to flow, fragmentation giving way to aggregation. The merger is just that cycle, expressed on the largest scale we can witness. And witnessing matters. Because we are not neutral observers drifting outside the system. Our perspective is shaped by where we sit within it. We experience the merger not as an abstract simulation, but as a sequence of lived skies, inherited maps, rewritten stories. Even now, long before any visible change, that inheritance has begun. The night sky you see tonight is not the same sky your distant descendants will see. The difference may be imperceptible year to year, but it is real. Positions shift. Velocities change. The configuration is already sliding towards something else. The fact that this slide is smooth does not make it trivial. Smooth change is the most powerful kind. It bypasses alarm. It bypasses resistance. It simply becomes the new normal. That is how continents drift, how climates shift, how languages evolve, and how galaxies merge. The drama we imagine, bright collisions, violent upheaval, is mostly a projection of human storytelling instincts. The universe prefers gradients. It prefers patience. And patience is terrifying because it cannot be outrun. You cannot speed past a process that lasts billions of years. You can only exist within it. Andromeda's approach is patient. It does not care if it is noticed. But we notice anyway. We notice because noticing is what intelligence does when given enough time and perspective. It traces patterns. It extrapolates futures. It feels the weight of inevitability and asks what that means for something that will not last long enough to see the end. That question has no final answer, but it has a context. The context is this: the universe is not arranged around us, but it is not hostile to understanding either. It allows small systems, minds, cultures, civilizations, to glimpse processes far larger than themselves, even when those processes will continue long after the glimpse fades. That allowance is rare, and it gives the present moment an unexpected depth. We are alive at a time when two massive spiral galaxies still exist as separate entities, when their future collision can be predicted, visualized, narrated, when the sky still carries the memory of structure before it is erased into smoothness. That makes now a threshold, not a dramatic one, not a sharp one, a quiet one. On one side, a universe where galaxies are many and distinct. On the other, a universe where one galaxy remains, alone in the dark, carrying the blended history of everything that fell into it. Andromeda is the hinge between those states. It is not just bigger than you think. It is heavier with consequence than it appears, because it marks the transition from a cosmos rich in visible structure to one where structure retreats inward, becoming harder to see, easier to forget. The merger will not announce that transition with fire or sound. It will simply proceed. And one day, far in the future, any beings looking up from within Milkomeda will see a sky that feels eternal, unaware that it was once assembled from pieces that had names, distances, and stories of their own. That forgetting is not failure. It is what happens when change completes. And right now, before the forgetting, before the settling, we stand in a narrow band of time where the motion is slow enough to track, but clear enough to matter. Andromeda is coming. Not to end anything, but to finish a configuration that has been temporary all along. There's a quiet danger in stories this large. They can start to feel abstract. Billions of years, trillions of stars, motions so slow they blur into inevitability. So let's anchor again, back to a single point inside the flow, back to a human-scale witness, even if that witness is imagined far into the future. Picture a world orbiting a star that once belonged to the Milky Way. Its sky has changed gradually over countless generations. No one remembers the old patterns. No one remembers when Andromeda was a separate name. The sky they inherit is dense, luminous, unfamiliar to us, but normal to them. This is the critical realization. The merger is not experienced as loss by those born after it. It is only loss from the perspective of memory. For them, the galaxy has always been this way. The light has always come from every direction. The absence of a clean spiral or a dramatic band across the sky does not feel like erasure. It feels like home. This is how cosmic change hides itself, by outlasting witnesses. And that reframes our position right now. We are not at the beginning of the story, and we are not at the end. We are at a moment when contrast still exists, when we can compare what is with what will be. Contrast is where meaning sharpens. Right now, the Milky Way has a shape you can point to. You can photograph it from the outside, at least in simulations and other galaxies like it. You can draw it, label it, teach it. That clarity is fragile. It exists only because the galaxy is young enough and isolated enough to retain structure. Andromeda's approach is the force that will erase that clarity. Not violently, not suddenly, but completely. Once the merger is finished, no observer inside Milkomeda will ever be able to reconstruct the original spirals from direct observation alone. The information will be scrambled beyond recovery. Stellar orbits will be randomized, gas flows homogenized. The galaxy will forget its youth. This is not metaphor. It's information theory. The merger increases entropy at the galactic scale. It takes ordered motion and converts it into disordered motion. Once that happens, the past becomes inaccessible, not philosophically, but physically. That fact gives the present an almost archival quality. We are living while the record still exists. We can still see Andromeda as separate. We can still map its rotation, its spiral arms, its star clusters. We can still compare it to the Milky Way and notice similarities and differences. Those comparisons will not be possible forever. After the merger, there will be no before written in the sky. Only inference, only models, only stories. That doesn't mean knowledge disappears. It means it becomes second-hand, dependent on preserved records, on memory passed forward across civilizations, if any survive that long. The sky itself will no longer testify. This is one of the most counterintuitive aspects of cosmic evolution. The universe does not preserve its own history by default. It erases it as part of normal operation. Stars burn their fuel and fade. Galaxies merge and lose structure. Expansion carries evidence beyond reach. Even the background glow of the Big Bang thins into invisibility. The universe forgets. And forgetting is not a malfunction. It is the cost of motion. Andromeda's merger with the Milky Way is one of those forgetting events, a transition where detail is traded for stability, where fine structure is sacrificed to produce something larger, quieter, longer lived. That trade is happening everywhere, all the time. We just happen to be close enough to notice this one. Now consider another inversion of intuition. From a purely physical standpoint, the merger is already decided. The equations are stable, the uncertainties are small. Given what we know about mass, velocity, and gravity, the outcome is locked in. But from a lived standpoint, the merger is barely beginning. There is a strange asymmetry here. Certainty without immediacy. We know what will happen, but we will never experience it ourselves. Not as biological humans, at least. That gap tempts us to treat the event as theoretical, almost fictional. Something that belongs to science, not to us. But that's a trick of lifespan. Plenty of things matter deeply, even when they unfold beyond individual lifetimes. Civilizations, climates, species. The merger sits in that same category, just stretched to a more extreme scale. It shapes the conditions future intelligences will inherit. It shapes what will be observable. It shapes what kinds of questions will even be askable. And those are not abstract consequences. They are foundational. Imagine trying to infer cosmic expansion in a universe where all other galaxies have vanished beyond the horizon. Imagine trying to discover the Big Bang without a cosmic microwave background. Imagine trying to understand galactic evolution from inside a single, smooth, elliptical galaxy. Those future scientists, if they exist, will be brilliant, but they will be constrained by absence, by a lack of evidence that once filled the sky. They may never know how dynamic the universe once looked. And that means our era carries something rare, direct visual access to cosmic structure in mid-evolution. Andromeda is part of that access. It is the nearest large galaxy. The clearest example of a future merger, the one whose motion we can measure most precisely, the one whose fate is tied most intimately to our own. If you want to understand how the universe builds and unbuilds structure, you don't need to look to quasars at the edge of time or simulations on a screen. You just need to look up. That faint smudge in the sky is not just another galaxy. It is a demonstration, a working example of gravity's long game. And that game is not about speed or violence, it's about patience, about accumulation, about allowing small imbalances to compound until transformation becomes unavoidable. That's why Andromeda is so unsettling. Not because it threatens us, but because it reveals how little drama is required for total change. No explosion announces the end of the Milky Way as a spiral galaxy. No singular moment marks the loss. The arms simply stretch, blur, and fade into something else. The identity dissolves without protest. That's how large systems end, not with catastrophe, but with reclassification. One day, far in the future, there will be no Milky Way. Not destroyed, not shattered, just no longer a meaningful category. And that is harder to emotionally process than annihilation. Because annihilation feels like an event. Reclassification feels like erasure. But from the universe's perspective, nothing is erased. Matter remains. energy flows, orbits continue. The story simply stops using one word and starts using another. Spiral becomes elliptical. Two becomes one. Many histories become one blended outcome. This is what gravity does when given time. And time is the only resource the universe has in excess. So when we say Andromeda is moving toward us, what we really mean is this. The universe is in the middle of a slow decision about how this region of space will be organized for the next several trillion years. That decision is already made, but its consequences are still unfolding. And we, brief, fragile, conscious, happen to exist during the long, quiet opening act, when the shapes are still distinct enough to recognize, when the motion is still slow enough to measure, when the future can still be described in the language of approach, rather than aftermath. That coincidence does not make us central, but it does make us witnesses. And witnesses, even temporary ones, carry a responsibility. Not to stop the process, not to fear it, but to notice it while it is still legible. Because once the merger is complete, the sky will no longer explain itself. It will simply be. And everything that once made it dramatic will have been absorbed into a single, settled glow. Beautiful, ancient, and silent about how it came to be. There's one more intuition we have to dismantle before this story can settle properly. The idea that scale and relevance are opposites. That the bigger a process is, the less it has to do with us. Andromeda exposes how false that is, not by threatening Earth directly, but by revealing how deeply entangled even the smallest observers are with the largest motions. Because you are not watching Andromeda from outside the system. You are riding the Milky Way as it falls. Every breath you take happens inside a galaxy already committed to a trajectory. Every human achievement, language, cities, technology, unfolds on a platform that is itself moving through intergalactic space toward another platform just as massive. That doesn't reduce those achievements. It contextualizes them. When you zoom far enough out, the Milky Way is not a home. It's a vehicle, a structure in transit. And like any vehicle, it carries cargo, stars, planets, chemistry, life, across environments that change slowly but decisively. The merger is a change of environment, not a crash, not an invasion, a migration. And migration has always mattered. On Earth, migrations reshape ecosystems, cultures, genomes. They introduce stress, opportunity, hybridization. The galactic merger is that same pattern, scaled up beyond instinctive comprehension. Two stellar populations with different histories mix. Two chemical lineages blend. Two gravitational memories overwrite each other. What emerges is not superior or inferior. It is simply adapted to a new context. That context is denser, older, quieter. And here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. The merger is not the most extreme thing that will ever happen to us cosmically. It's just the closest one. The universe has already survived far worse. In its early epochs, galaxies collided far more frequently. The cosmos was crowded. Relative velocities were higher, star formation rates were orders of magnitude greater. Black holes grew violently. Radiation fields were harsher. Life, at least as we understand it, could not have existed then. By contrast, the Milky Way Andromeda merger happens in a mature universe, a universe that has cooled, expanded, calmed. The violence is muted. The timelines are generous. In some ways, this is the safest possible era for such an event. That inversion is uncomfortable. We expect the future to be more dangerous, not less. But cosmically, danger peaked long ago. What remains is rearrangement, not creation from chaos. Andromeda is not a harbinger of apocalypse. It is a relic of an older, rougher universe, arriving late to a quieter stage. That lateness matters, because it means that while the merger will reshape the galaxy, it will not erase complexity. It will preserve it, redistribute it, and slowly wind it down over trillions of years rather than snuff it out abruptly. From a cosmic standpoint, that's mercy. From a narrative standpoint, it's unsettling, because it denies us a clean climax. There is no single night when the sky suddenly changes forever. There is no final image that captures the moment. There is only accumulation. And accumulation is hard to dramatize unless you're willing to sit with it. But sit with it long enough, and another realization emerges. The merger is not just something that will happen, it is something that has been happening for a very long time. The Milky Way you see now is already the product of past mergers. The Sagittarius dwarf galaxy is currently being torn apart and absorbed, its stars wrapping around our galaxy in long streams. Other, older mergers are written into the motions of stars near the galactic halo. We are already living in a hybrid galaxy. Andromeda is just the largest remaining contributor. This continuity matters because it reframes the future as extension rather than rupture. The galaxy is not about to become something alien. It is about to become more itself, more massive, more mixed, more representative of its environment. The same can be said of us. Humanity is already a hybrid system, cultures merging, technologies blending, identities reshaping under pressure and contact. We recognize this pattern intimately, even if we rarely connect it to cosmic scales. The universe is not asking us to imagine something fundamentally new. It is asking us to recognize the same process operating without regard for scale. And that recognition does something subtle to fear. Fear thrives on suddenness, on surprise, on loss without preparation. The Milky Way Andromeda merger offers none of that. It is visible, predictable, slow. It is the opposite of a jump scare. It is a horizon you can watch approach your entire life and still not see change day to day. That kind of inevitability doesn't demand panic. It invites perspective. Perspective is not resignation, it's alignment. Understanding where you are in a process so large that resistance is meaningless. But awareness is not. Awareness changes how you interpret your moment. When you know the sky is temporary, you stop treating it as decoration. When you know the galaxy has a lifespan, you stop treating it as background. When you know even the largest structures are in motion, you stop confusing stillness with importance. Importance comes from participation, and we participate whether we want to or not. The atoms in your body are not loyal to Earth. They are loyal to gravity. Over long enough timescales, they will be rearranged, recycled, incorporated into stars or dust or nothing at all. That's not a threat. It's a lineage. The merger extends that lineage forward, giving those atoms new trajectories, new roles, new contexts. Some will end up deep in the core of Milkomeda. Some will be flung into the void. Some will remain in quiet orbits for trillions of years, barely disturbed. None of those outcomes are mistakes. They are options selected by mass and motion. And here, at the human scale, that selection process feels alien, only because we are not used to thinking in distributions instead of destinies. The universe does not assign outcomes individually. It assigns ranges. Life exists within those ranges when conditions allow. Andromeda's approach changes the ranges. That's all. It widens some, narrows others. It does not close the book. It turns a page so slowly that you can read while it's happening. That's the strange gift of this particular collision. It is close enough to matter, but far enough to contemplate. Big enough to destabilize intuition, but slow enough to absorb. When you hold that balance, something unexpected happens. The merger stops feeling like a future problem and starts feeling like a background truth. Like continental drift. Like stellar evolution. Like aging. Things you don't panic about because they are built into the rules of being here. Andromeda is not coming to end our story. It is coming to continue the universe's story through us, around us, and long after us. The fact that we can see it coming, measure it, model it, imagine it, is not incidental. It is the universe allowing one of its smallest, briefest structures to glimpse the arc it is riding. That glimpse does not make us powerful. It makes us oriented. And in a universe defined by motion, orientation is the closest thing to meaning you can hold. So when you look up at that faint smear of light and think of Andromeda as distant, abstract, irrelevant, remember this: it is already part of your environment. It is already shaping the future sky. It is already rewriting the category called home. Not abruptly, not violently, but with the quiet authority of gravity, executing a decision made billions of years ago, patient enough to include us for a while, and indifferent enough to continue without us when our time passes. And that is not a threat. It is simply the scale at which the universe keeps its promises. There's a final illusion we haven't addressed yet: the idea that awareness changes outcomes. That if we can see Andromeda coming, if we can calculate trajectories and simulate futures, then somehow the event becomes less real, less binding, as if prediction turns inevitability into abstraction. It doesn't. Awareness doesn't slow gravity. It doesn't bend orbits. It doesn't negotiate with mass. What it does is something quieter and stranger. It changes how an event exists before it arrives. The merger is already part of our present, not because it's happening now in a visible way, but because it is already integrated into our models, our language, our expectations of the sky. The future has reached backward into the present through knowledge. That reach is rare. Most beings that ever live in the universe will not know the long-term fate of their environment. They will experience change without context, drift without foresight. We are unusual not because we are spared change, but because we can see it coming while it is still slow. That creates a strange emotional state, one that sits between urgency and indifference. On one hand, nothing demands action. There is no countdown clock, no crisis meeting, no technological solution to pursue. The merger is immune to intervention. On the other hand, it quietly reframes everything. It forces the recognition that the largest structure you can meaningfully belong to is not fixed, that even the galaxy is provisional. And provisional homes change how you relate to permanence. Think about how differently people treat buildings they know will be demolished versus those meant to stand for centuries. The awareness of eventual transformation alters attachment, not necessarily weakening it, but making it more intentional. The Milky Way, once you accept its future, becomes that kind of structure. Not fragile, temporary. And temporary things invite a different kind of care. This is not sentimental projection. It's a psychological response to scale. When something is eternal, you can ignore it. When something will change, but not too fast, you are invited to notice it while it lasts. That's the position we're in now with the night sky. We live during the final era when the Milky Way's spiral structure is intact, legible, and dominant in our sky. Long after our civilization ends, the sky will still exist, but it will not look like this. The band of the Milky Way will blur, thicken, fracture, then disappear into a smoother glow. The sky you see tonight is not generic. It is historically specific. That specificity gives it weight. And Andromeda's presence sharpens that weight because it reminds us that what we're seeing is not just beautiful, it is transitional. The stars are not fixed ornaments. They are participants. Every point of light is moving, accelerating, responding to forces that do not care about aesthetic symmetry. The fact that they currently arrange themselves into something we call a spiral is a coincidence of timing. A beautiful coincidence, but still a coincidence. The merger exposes that. It strips away the comfort of thinking that the universe chose this shape, that it prefers it, that it will preserve it. It won't. And yet, nothing about that feels cruel once you sit with it long enough. Cruelty implies intention. The universe has none. What it has instead is consistency. Gravity behaves the same way everywhere. Given mass and time, it aggregates. Given aggregation and motion, it merges. Given merging, it randomizes. Given enough randomization, it settles. The Milky Way Andromeda merger is that sequence, playing out locally. And because it is local, because Andromeda is close enough to see with the naked eye, it feels personal in a way most cosmic events do not. It feels like something happening to us. But that feeling is misleading. Nothing is being singled out. We are simply in the path of a process that does not divert. That realization does not reduce human significance. It relocates it. Significance is no longer about centrality. It's about coherence, the ability to form meaning while embedded in change. That ability is fragile. It depends on memory, language, continuity, transmission. And here is where the merger becomes quietly relevant in an unexpected way. It is a test of whether meaning can survive scales that erase context. After the merger, future intelligences may never see a spiral galaxy. They may never see another galaxy at all. Their sky will offer fewer clues about origin, expansion, and evolution. If they know those things, it will be because knowledge was carried forward across vast spans of time, preserved against entropy. That is not guaranteed. The universe does not safeguard memory. If anything, it erodes it. And erosion is not violence. It is default. This means that our era is not just a point in a physical timeline. It is a bottleneck for understanding. We live at a time when the universe still displays its own mechanics openly, when structure has not yet been smoothed away, when the evidence for cosmic evolution is still written across the sky in light and motion. Andromeda is one of the clearest pieces of that evidence. It is a visible reminder that galaxies are not static islands, that even the nearest ones are moving with intent. Not intent as desire, but intent as direction. Blue shift is direction. Approach is direction. Merger is direction. And direction implies arrow, not of purpose, of time. The arrow is pointing toward less structure, fewer distinctions, greater mixing, longer quiet. That arrow is not pessimistic. It is thermodynamic. And understanding that does something profound. It dissolves the expectation that the future must be more dramatic than the present. In many ways, the opposite is true. The most dramatic era of the universe is already behind us. The era of violent formation, of rampant starbirth, of frequent collisions. What remains is consolidation. Andromeda is not an anomaly. It is one of the last major consolidations in our cosmic neighbourhood. After it, the universe becomes simpler, not more complex, at least visually. And simplicity at scale feels like loss, only if you expect spectacle to continue forever. But spectacle was never promised. Only process. And process continues. Long after Milkomeda forms, long after its stars age and fade, long after even black holes evaporate through unimaginably slow processes, the universe will still be doing something. Not nothing, something quieter, something harder to notice. And that, perhaps, is the deepest emotional resolution this story offers. Not fear, not awe alone, but acceptance of quiet. The idea that the universe does not climax and end, but settles and persists, even as the structures that once made it legible dissolve. Andromeda's approach is not a countdown to fireworks. It is the beginning of a long fade from sharpness to smoothness, from distinction to blend, from many to one. That fade is not tragic. It is honest. And honesty at scale is rare enough to feel intimate. So when you look at Andromeda now, faint, distant, easy to dismiss, understand what you are actually seeing. You are seeing a future already in motion. You are seeing the last clear separation before mixing. You are seeing a galaxy not as it will be remembered, but as it still is. That is a privilege of timing, not importance. And timing is the only thing the universe ever grants temporarily. Everything else is subject to gravity, including us. We don't escape that fact. We participate in it. And the participation does not end when the merger begins. It continues as long as there is matter, motion, and time enough for one to respond to the other. Andromeda is not bigger than you think, because it will collide with us. It is bigger because it reveals, quietly, patiently, how even the largest structures are provisional, and how being alive at the right moment lets you see that proviso written across the sky before it fades. That is not a lesson. It is a condition. And right now, it is visible. There's a strange calm that settles in once you accept all of this. Not resignation, not indifference. Calm. The kind that comes from finally matching your internal sense of scale to the universe's actual one. Because the merger doesn't rush you. It doesn't demand reaction. It simply is. And that's unsettling only if you expect the universe to revolve around urgency. Most of human anxiety comes from compressed timelines, deadlines, crises, finite spans where action feels mandatory and delay feels like failure. The Andromeda merger exists outside that psychological frame. It operates on timescales so long that urgency collapses. What's left is presence. You are here. The galaxy is moving. Both are true. At the same time, that coexistence of brief awareness inside vast motion is the real human position in this story. Not dominance, not helplessness. Witnesshood. And witnesshood is not passive. To witness something is to integrate it into how you understand yourself, to let it reframe your assumptions about permanence, about home, about what counts as stable. The night sky has always done this for us, quietly. It has always hinted that we are not the centre, not the end point, not the measure of all things. But for most of history, the sky felt eternal, fixed, reliable. The merger shatters that illusion gently. It tells us, even this moves, even this changes, even this will not remain what it is. And it tells us that without cruelty, without haste, without warning sirens, just motion. That matters because it forces a recalibration of meaning. If the galaxy is temporary, then meaning cannot come from cosmic permanence. It has to come from alignment, being coherent with the process you're inside, even if you don't control it. That's a hard idea to accept, but it's also freeing. Because once you stop expecting the universe to provide permanence, you stop demanding that your own structures, cultures, identities, achievements outlast everything. You allow them to be significant without being eternal. The merger invites that humility, not as a moral lesson, but as a side effect of scale. And scale is the only teacher that never exaggerates. Now think again about Andromeda itself, not as an abstract future collision, but as an object you can actually locate. Right ascension, declination, a faint oval you can see on a clear night, if you know where to look. That faintness is deceptive. You are seeing Andromeda as it was 2.5 million years ago. Its light left before humans existed, before tools, before fire, before language. And yet, that ancient light is now part of your present. The merger hasn't happened yet, but its components are already interacting with us through photons, through gravity, through prediction. Time is layered here in a way that collapses intuition. We are seeing the past of an object that will define our far future. That overlap is not poetic metaphor. It's literal. The future is already visible in the past. Andromeda is not just approaching spatially, it is approaching temporally. Each photon that reaches us narrows the gap between what we see and what will be. That convergence is subtle, but it's real. And it means the merger is not just something out there. It is something we are already in conversation with, across time. That conversation is asymmetrical. We cannot reply in a way that matters, but it is still an exchange. We receive information, we update our models, we fold the future into our present understanding. That folding is what makes intelligence different from mere survival. Most matter moves blindly. We move knowingly. That knowledge doesn't grant power, but it grants orientation. And orientation changes experience. It changes how you feel under the night sky. Once you know that the Milky Way's graceful band is temporary, it becomes more vivid, not less. More precious, not more fragile. You notice its texture, its irregularities, its asymmetries. You stop assuming it will always be there to look at. And that assumption shift is subtle but profound. It turns observation into participation. The sky is no longer just something you look at. It is something you are inside of, for a limited time during a specific phase of its evolution. The merger is what defines that phase. Before the merger, the sky is structured, dramatic, layered with spiral order. After the merger, the sky is smooth, immersive, quieter. Neither is better, but only one is now. That now matters because it is the only time when comparison is possible. And comparison is where understanding lives. Future beings inside Milkomeda, if any exist, will not look up and see two galaxies on a collision course. They will not see spiral arms. They will not see the local group. They will see one galaxy. And from that vantage point, the universe will appear simpler than it once was. Not because it is simpler, but because complexity has been averaged out. That averaging is not loss at the level of physics, but it is loss at the level of narrative. Stories require contrast. And contrast is disappearing, slowly, quietly, as structures merge and horizons recede. The Milky Way Andromeda merger is one of the last great contrasts available to observers like us. It shows two massive systems, still distinct, still legible, already interacting. It lets us see process midstream. That is rare enough to feel like coincidence. But coincidence is just what patterns look like from inside. Nothing arranged this moment for us. We simply happen to exist during it. And that fact does not demand gratitude or despair. It demands attention. Attention is the only response proportionate to scale. Not panic. Not celebration. Attention. To notice that the largest thing you belong to is not static. To notice that motion does not require drama to matter. To notice that the future does not always arrive as an event. Sometimes it arrives as a direction you are already moving in. Andromeda is that direction. A vector drawn across millions of light years, pointing inward, toward convergence. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't need witnesses, but it has them anyway. US, briefly. And that briefness does not invalidate the witness. It sharpens it. Because to be conscious at all inside a universe this old, this large, this indifferent, is already improbable. To be conscious at a time when the universe is still visibly reorganizing itself is rarer still. Andromeda's approach marks that window, not as a warning, as a signature, a mark in the sky that says, you are here during transition. You are alive, or the galaxy is becoming something else. You are small, yes, but you are not irrelevant. You are matter that knows it is moving. And that knowledge, fragile, temporary, unrepeatable, is the one thing gravity cannot erase. It will outlast you only as long as you hold it. But while you do, the universe is not just happening. It is being noticed. And that, in a cosmos defined by motion rather than memory, is as close to significance as anything ever gets. By the time you reach this point in the story, something subtle has already happened. The merger has stopped feeling like a headline and started feeling like a condition. Not a future shock, but a background truth, like gravity itself. And that shift matters because conditions don't demand reaction, they demand orientation. Orientation is how small things survive inside large systems. Think about how sailors once navigated. They didn't control the ocean, they read it. They learned its currents, its patterns, its moods. They didn't fight to scale, they aligned with it. The Andromeda merger is the oceanic scale of our cosmic environment. We cannot change it. We can only understand what kind of sea we're already crossing. And understanding does not mean control. It means knowing where you are. Right now, we are in the last relatively calm stretch before the Milky Way structure begins to noticeably soften. The spiral arms are still coherent. The disk is still thin. The galactic center is still one dominant anchor. That won't last forever, but it will last long enough that no human civilization will ever experience the transition as sudden. Which means the danger is not shock. The danger is forgetting that change is underway at all. Because when change is slow, it becomes invisible. This is how deep time processes shape everything without ever being noticed. Mountains rise, Continents drift, atmospheres transform, species evolve, and now, galaxies merge. All without announcement. The universe does not warn you when it crosses thresholds. It does not ring bells or draw lines. Thresholds are only visible in hindsight, when you look back and realize the rules have changed. The Andromeda merger is one of those thresholds, not because of when it happens, but because of what it marks. The end of the Milky Way as an isolated spiral galaxy. That sentence sounds dramatic, but physically it's mundane. Isolation is temporary, interaction is normal. The Milky Way has simply been between major encounters for a while. We mistook that pause for permanence. Andromeda corrects that mistake. It tells us that the galaxy was never meant to remain this way indefinitely, that spiral order is not a default state. It's a phase that exists only under specific conditions: sufficient angular momentum, cold gas, relative isolation. Remove any of those and the spiral fades. Andromeda removes isolation. Everything else follows. This is why the merger feels so complete. It doesn't just alter one feature, it changes the conditions that allow features to exist at all. The rules of the environment shift, and the galaxy responds accordingly. That response is not chaotic. It is adaptive. Galaxies are adaptive systems, not conscious, but responsive. They reorganize in ways that allow them to persist under new constraints. The elliptical galaxy that emerges from the merger is not a failure of structure. It is a solution. A shape that works when rotation is no longer dominant. A shape that survives when gas is heated and dispersed. A shape that trades beauty, as we define it, for longevity. And longevity is the universe's quiet preference. The most common galaxies today are ellipticals and lenticulars, not spirals. Spirals are visually striking, but they are transitional. They appear when conditions are just right and fade when those conditions change. We happen to live inside one during its most photogenic era. That is luck. But luck does not imply fragility. It implies timing. Now let that idea settle into something personal. Everything you experience, your culture, your language, your technology, exists inside layers of timing like this. Not just cosmic timing, but geological, biological, historical. We are always born into systems mid-process. We inherit structures that feel permanent because we arrive after they formed and before they dissolve. The Milky Way is one of those structures. Andromeda's approach reminds us that inheritance is not ownership. We don't possess the galaxy. We pass through it during one of its phases. That perspective is destabilizing only if you expect the universe to guarantee continuity. It doesn't. It offers opportunity. Opportunity for complexity to arise, persist for a while, and then be transformed into something else. That transformation is not loss in the way we instinctively frame loss. It is change without erasure. The stars do not vanish. The matter does not disappear. The energy does not evaporate. It reorganizes. Reorganization is the universe's most common verb, and the Milky Way Andromeda merger is one of the clearest sentences written in that language. From far outside, this region of space will go from containing several distinct spiral galaxies to containing one large elliptical galaxy surrounded by a few smaller companions. From far inside, the experience will be more subtle, less about disappearance, more about blending. Blending is hard to dramatize because it lacks edges, but edges are a human craving. The universe does not cater to it. Instead, it offers gradients. And gradients are where life actually happens. Life thrives in gradients of temperature, chemistry, energy, density. Absolute extremes are usually sterile. Perfect uniformity is sterile too. The merger does not push the galaxy toward either extreme. It pushes it toward a broad middle, a region of parameter space where things are calmer, slower, less differentiated, but also less volatile. From a cosmic perspective, that is stability. From a narrative perspective, it feels like an ending. But endings only exist if you expect repetition. The universe does not. It expects continuation under new conditions. Which brings us to the quiet emotional resolution hiding underneath all this scale. The merger does not diminish human meaning, because human meaning was never meant to be cosmic in scope. It was meant to be local, contextual, temporary. The problem arises only when we try to anchor meaning to structures that outlast us. Galaxies outlast civilizations. Stars outlast species. The universe outlasts everything. Meaning cannot be attached to any of those and survive intact. But meaning attached to participation, to being aware while something is happening, can exist fully, even if briefly. And right now, something enormous is happening. Not dramatically, not urgently, but undeniably. Two spiral galaxies are falling together, already exchanging gravity, already reshaping each other's futures. The night sky we see is already outdated, a snapshot of a configuration that is dissolving even as we look at it. That doesn't make the view less real. It makes it more specific. You are seeing the Milky Way during its spiral era. That era has a beginning. It has a middle. And it has an end. Andromeda is the marker of that end, not as a villain, not as a destroyer, but as a signal that the conditions are changing. The universe is turning a dial, not flipping a switch. And you are alive while the needle is still near the center. That is not something to fear. It is something to register. Because once the needle moves too far, the past configuration becomes inaccessible, not just physically, but conceptually. Future minds will not easily imagine a spiral galaxy if they have never seen one. Future stories will not include Andromeda as a separate place. Future skies will not explain their own history. We live at a time when explanation is still written in light. Andromeda is part of that explanation. It shows us that even the most massive, luminous, awe-inspiring structures in the universe are not endpoints. They are phases inside longer arcs. And those arcs do not care whether we feel ready. They proceed. Quietly. Relentlessly. With enough patience to include us for a while, and enough indifference to continue when we are gone. That is not nihilism. It is realism at scale. And once you accept it, something unexpected happens. The universe stops feeling hostile. It stops feeling like a stage built for something else. It starts feeling like a process you are briefly allowed to observe from the inside. Not to judge. Not to change. Just to notice. And noticing, in a universe that erases its own history as it goes, is the rarest form of participation there is. Andromeda is moving toward us. We are moving toward it. Not because anything is wrong, but because this is what happens when gravity has enough time to finish its sentences. And right now, we are still early enough in the paragraph to read the words as they form. By now, the scale has settled into your bones. The merger no longer feels like spectacle or threat. It feels like gravity breathing, slow, constant, unavoidable. And that's exactly where it should land, because the final movement of this story is not about motion anymore. It's about belonging. Not belonging as ownership, not as dominance, but as placement. We spend most of our lives trying to locate ourselves in smaller systems, families, cultures, nations, histories. Those systems feel large until something much larger slides into view and reframes everything. Andromeda does that. It reminds us that the largest structure we emotionally attach to, the galaxy itself, is still only a local arrangement inside a much older flow. The Milky Way is not a container. It's a current. And currents do not stop. They merge. Once you accept that, a quiet truth becomes visible. We have never been standing still. Not as individuals, not as a species, not as a planet, not even as a galaxy. Stillness has always been an illusion, created by short lifespans and slow clocks. The merger simply removes the illusion at the largest scale we can still comprehend. That removal does not strip meaning away, it relocates it, from permanence to participation, from outcome to alignment. You are not here to see the end of the merger. You are here to exist during its opening conditions. That distinction matters because openings are where information is richest, where contrast is highest, where structure is still legible enough to be understood, even if only partially. After the merger, things will be smoother, quieter, less differentiated. That future galaxy will last longer than the Milky Way ever did as a spiral, but it will also be less informative, less expressive, less willing to show its work. Right now, the universe is still showing its work. You can look at Andromeda and see a spiral galaxy midlife. You can look at the Milky Way and see another, similar but not identical. You can compare, contrast, infer. You can watch gravity preparing to erase that contrast, not out of malice, but out of inevitability. That visibility is temporary, and temporary visibility is not a given in a universe this old. It is a window. The fact that we are conscious during that window does not make us important in a cosmic hierarchy, but it does make our perspective rare, and rarity gives weight to attention. Attention is the only thing we can offer that the universe does not already have. Matter is abundant. Energy is conserved. Time is relentless. Attention is fleeting. And right now, attention can still catch the Milky Way before it blurs into something else. That is not an accident. It is not destiny. It is timing. And timing is everything at scale. The merger will not care whether anyone remembers the Milky Way as it is now. The universe does not archive for sentiment. But that does not make memory meaningless. It makes memory local. And local meaning is the only kind that ever exists. The galaxies that merged to form the Milky Way did not preserve their names. Their shapes did not survive. But their matter did. Their influence did. Their contribution is still present, inside the stars you see, inside the elements that make up your body. They mattered, even though they vanished as categories. The Milky Way will be the same. Its name will fade. Its spiral arms will dissolve. But its substance, its stars, its chemistry, its gravitational imprint will persist inside something larger. That continuity is not poetic. It is physical, and it extends to us. The atoms in you are not loyal to the Milky Way any more than they were loyal to the stars that forged them. They are loyal to physics, to pathways, to probability. Some fraction of them will end up in Milkomeda's core. Some will be flung outward. Some may never leave their local stellar neighbourhood at all. There is no script, only distribution. And yet here we are, briefly able to trace that distribution forward, to imagine trajectories that will outlast every story we tell about ourselves. That imagining is not hubris. It is orientation. It is the same instinct that made early humans look at the stars and map them, not because the stars needed mapping, but because humans needed bearings. Andromeda is a bearing. It tells us which way the galaxy is leaning. It tells us that our cosmic environment is not static, not isolated, not permanent. It tells us that even the grandest structures are transitional. And it tells us this without urgency, without drama, without demand, just motion. That is why this story resolves not with an explosion or a warning, but with a settling awareness. The universe is not building toward us. It is not collapsing against us. It is passing through configurations that briefly include us. Andromeda's approach is one of those configurations, large enough to notice, slow enough to contemplate, inevitable enough to accept. You do not need to fear it. You do not need to prepare for it. You only need to recognize what it means. It means the sky is alive with history and future at the same time. It means the largest thing you can see is already changing. It means home has always been a moving concept. And it means that being alive now places you inside a rare overlap, a time when the universe is old enough to be structured, young enough to still show the structure changing, and quiet enough that intelligence can emerge to notice it. That overlap will not last forever. It never does. But it lasts long enough to matter. Andromeda is not a doom. It is a disclosure that nothing at this scale is finished. Not galaxies, not stars, not even the configurations we build meaning around. Everything is provisional. Everything is becoming something else. And the fact that you can see that, feel it, hold it, sit with it, means you are not lost in the universe. You are oriented within it. You are standing on a small world, inside a moving solar system, embedded in a drifting galaxy, falling gently toward another, inside a universe that has been unfolding for nearly 14 billion years and is nowhere near done. That is not insignificance. That is placement. And placement, in a cosmos defined by motion, is the only stable thing there ever is. The Milky Way will change. Andromeda will merge. The sky will smooth. Stories will be forgotten. But right now, before that smoothing completes, the universe is still textured enough to read. And you are here during that reading. Not at the centre, not at the end, but exactly where the story is legible. And that is enough. So this is where the motion finally comes to rest. Not in space, not in time, but in understanding. Not the kind that explains everything, the kind that settles everything. Andromeda is still coming. The Milky Way is still falling. Gravity has not softened its grip, and the future has not changed its mind. But we have shifted. At the beginning of this story, Andromeda felt like an approaching object, huge, distant, abstract, a cosmic headline, a fact to be learned, something that would happen long after we were gone. Now it should feel different. Now it should feel like context. Because the real outcome of this collision is not Milkomeda, not elliptical galaxies, not black hole mergers or reshaped skies. The real outcome is orientation. You now know that the largest structure you can belong to is not fixed, that the sky you inherit is temporary, that even galaxies have lifespans, phases, endings that are not catastrophes, but transitions. And that knowledge doesn't make the universe colder. It makes it honest. Honesty at this scale is rare. Most of the universe is too far, too fast, too quiet, or too erased for its story to be read clearly. But here, right now, there is just enough structure left, just enough motion visible, just enough time between cause and consequence for awareness to exist. That window is closing. Slowly, patiently, without drama. Andromeda is one of the last great signals inside that window, a nearby, massive, undeniable reminder that the universe does not freeze its most beautiful arrangements. It lets them exist for a while, long enough to be inhabited, long enough to be noticed, long enough to matter locally. Then it moves on. That's not cruelty. That's how continuity works without sentiment. The Milky Way was never promised eternity. Neither were we. What was allowed, briefly, was coexistence. You live during the era when the Milky Way still has spiral arms, when the night sky still has a clear band of light, when Andromeda still has a name and a boundary, when the local group is still a group. Those facts will not always be true. They are true now. And now, at cosmic scale, is extraordinarily specific. Long after the merger, if any beings remain to look up, the sky will feel ancient and settled. It will not whisper about collisions or separations. It will not explain its own origin. It will simply glow. Smooth. Quiet. Whole. Those future observers may never know that their galaxy was once too. They may never know the word Andromeda. They may never imagine a time when the universe was crowded with visible neighbours. Unless memory survives. Unless stories are carried forward. Unless someone, somewhere, preserves the knowledge that this galaxy was once a meeting point, a convergence of histories that began long before any mind existed and continued long after most minds were gone. That preservation is not guaranteed. The universe does not care whether it is remembered. But we do. And that is the final human role in this story. Not to stop the merger, not to outlast it, not to conquer it, but to notice it while it is still happening. To be conscious during transition. To exist at a time when the universe is not yet smooth, not yet silent, not yet done rearranging itself in ways we can see. That is not a small thing. It is not everything, but it is enough. Andromeda is bigger than you think because it collapses distance between galaxies, between eras, between now and eventually. It turns the future into a direction instead of a mystery. It shows that the universe does not need urgency to be consequential. It only needs time. Gravity has time. The universe has time. We do not. And that contrast between abundance of time and scarcity of awareness is where meaning lives. Not cosmic meaning, human meaning, the kind that exists precisely because it will end. So when you look up at the night sky after this, when you find that faint, elongated glow and remember that it is already leaning toward us, don't think of it as a threat. Think of it as a reminder that nothing you stand on is finished, a reminder that motion does not need permission, a reminder that being alive now means being inside a rare alignment of scale, time, and visibility. You are here while galaxies are still distinct. You are here while futures can still be seen coming. You are here while the universe is still legible. That will not always be true, but it is true tonight. And that is the quiet, complete ending this story demands. Not fear, not triumph, not despair. Perspective. Andromeda is coming. We are moving too, not toward an ending, but toward a settling that will last longer than anything that came before. The sky will change. The galaxy will merge. Names will dissolve. But right now, before the smoothing, before the forgetting, the universe is still textured enough to be witnessed. And you are one of the witnesses. Brief, included, oriented. That is not everything. But in a universe built on motion, it is enough.